We still don't have one of those. I thought you were going to send me one, Jamie.
Action. I know. Sorry, I didn't. My Amazon order got delayed.
Alrighty. Episode 8 of The Pivot. Last episode, we chatted a bunch about building a 12-month enrollment marketing game plan, very high level, kind of bucketing things into 4 core groups and how we would allocate time, energy, and effort and budget into that.
That was a good one. That was a good one.
Was a good one. And so it's probably then fairly easy to listen to that and be like, cool, that was a lot. Now what do I do? Like, I have my plan. I can't move all 5 things forward at the same time. Where do I start? And I think the common thing that when we went through the pivot of you have to adjust your time, I slashed a bunch of the time that you all could allocate to certain things. Nobody even thought about or mentioned touching the time that was dedicated to the audit. And so I think that's a good place to start. And obviously we all also mentioned how that's kind of the beginning of the snowball rolling down the hill is the audit. You need that to determine where best to focus your time and energy for the biggest return on whatever it may be. And that will look different for the different components of your marketing, your admissions process, whatever the things you are auditing. And so would love to think about the audit way more specifically. And let's kind of maybe pivot off of, you don't have the opportunity to audit all of the things. Let's say you can outsource 2 audits, and then internally you have to do one with you and your team. What 2 things? So you're picking from the smorgasbord of stuff. What 2 things do you decide to outsource to a vendor that they will then audit for you? And then what thing do you regroup with your internal team to kind of audit and determine, next steps and action items?
Yeah. So I immediately go to, I don't know that I've ever really met too many people who work in higher ed who feel like they have a real handle on SEO. I feel like SEO is one that's a pretty easy, like, let's get an outside perspective from a vendor when it comes to SEO, because I just don't think, I think a lot of people in higher ed who are practitioners are just kind of afraid of it. They don't know all the angles of it. They don't know whether or not they should be looking for technical things on their website, which then is like, oh, is that our job or is it the webmaster's job or blah, blah, blah. Like all these kind of things. It's like my gut says that one is an easy one in my head to go to a vendor just because I feel like they're specialists in SEO a lot of times.
I agree with you on that one. I think SEO, but you got to make sure you know.
You said that like you don't want to agree with me. Like you most likely are not going to agree with me on the other points.
We shall see. I have some that I'm a little bullish on these days. I'm about to get on my soapbox, but I will just add. I love what you said on SEO. And I would encourage people, if you are going to audit your SEO, make sure you're auditing both the technical side and the content side. I was just on a call recently, had a conversation with someone who said, "Yep, we've got this great organic search partner. They're doing all of our SEO," and 90% of what they were doing was all technical SEO. And it's great. They're telling us how to restructure a website. They're eliminating all these dead pages. They're updating meta tags and alt text descriptions. They're working on page load speed time. All good things. All good things. Are they also analyzing your keyword rankings, where you're ranking, where your next opportunities are, helping you develop the topic clusters? Like, there's a whole content side of SEO, which is, you can just tweak your website a lot and that will produce results, but you also have to do the other side of SEO. There's backlinks, there's all these other aspects. Just make sure when you're doing that with a vendor, they're well-versed in all aspects of SEO. But any audit, I'd be happy with. I'd be happy with any outside audit. I agree with you. Most higher ed folks really don't have the in-house skill set to really audit their SEO. I think I'm sure some institutions out there do have like experts who are there, but whether or not they have the time. And then I think the other part is like, I'm definitely a believer in that one. Sorry.
Okay, I just lost my train of thought. No big deal. It was absolute gold, and now I'm just gonna have to
not
make
again.
Something up. I remember it. I think it's a good clarifying point. No, this is not. Don't get your hopes up, people. what content SEO is. I think when people think content SEO, they automatically think about maybe the core of content, long form pages and blog posts, right? Where content SEO is just words on the page, your headers, your descriptive copy of your programs, things like that. You're using acronyms. Like spell those words out, you'll get more value from it. Those types of things, that's still content SEO. Just because if you're thinking, I don't have any ebooks, I don't need content SEO. That's the wrong way to think about it. Content is not put together and packaged premium resources always. It is just the stuff that lives on your website that are the words. Different from the back end words that are the the meta descriptions and those types of things that you're talking about from the technical. So I think that's a good clarifying point so that people don't immediately assume, well, I don't have content, so therefore I don't need a content SEO audit. Would be the wrong way to think about it. Right.
Yeah, even the pages on your website, website pages have content that needs to be
the simple example is adding to the copy, like the copy editing, the crafting of the words on the page and where they are, things that will get those words to be read by bots and or lead towards a better user's experience so they stay on the page longer. That's all the benefits of like content SEO. Whereas like you could have the exact same words, not change them at all, but they're not the right header tags. And if you just change the header tag from not being a header tag at all to being H2, and you make the 3 subsection headers H2 consistently, that's a technical thing. If you didn't change the words at all and just made that technical change, you would be moving your SEO forward and optimizing it. So one is more technical, is more of the kind of more back end things I like to think about. But these circles overlap a little bit, and I totally understand where it's confusing.
They definitely overlap,
if you're
for sure.
thinking about you need a writer and someone who's like a content person who can help you put more words or rewrite the words better, then you're in content SEO land. Yeah.
And I think a big thing there too is, and what's hard and why I think agreeing with you both of that's the perfect one to outsource to a vendor is, I think a lot of the stuff we've heard before of, well, that's not how we talk about our program or this, that, and it's like, well, great. But everybody is searching this way. That's why this term has 5,000 monthly searches and the thing you have has 30, right? Of like, it doesn't matter in the student's mind. Those are the same. They don't know the difference between the two. You might, but they don't. Explain to them why they're different on this page. Boom. Now you have both. Like,
And I think the interesting part about that, and we can leave this topic in a second, but I feel like the interesting part about that is that sometimes, and again, this is the value of having a vendor do it, is a vendor can come in and say to the faculty, to whomever, this is how you need to talk about it because this is what people are typing into the search bar, not the way you've been talking about it. And sometimes internally that just can't be done. You can't have that conversation, like, it's like, no, the faculty are going to like rule the marketing department down because like, that's not how we talk about it. When a vendor comes in, they can kind of take that bullet for you and help you like move that needle in order to increase it. Everyone wins.
We've had clients come to us and say, hey, can you say this in front of this group? Can you send me an email that says these things so I can forward it to other people?
Oh yeah.
Because if I say it, they won't listen. They don't care. Yeah. If you say it as an SEO expert, they'll be like, okay, fine.
Yeah,
right? And it's like,
for sure.
It's the same words, but from a different mouth, it carries different weight.
Yeah.
I'm going to give a shout out to Becky Hood from the Southern Methodist University Simmons School of Education and Human Development. I was on a delightful call with her. She is the assistant dean of the Simmons School, and she said, this is one of those rare things that breaks what we normally just said. We were reading the pages together, looking at her website, and she goes, I think the words we're using to describe ourselves there, sometimes we just use these words that we think are right, but those are not the right words. We don't even use the word teacher anywhere there. And she was reading this paragraph that uses this like word with educators in it, but it was not. It was for teachers. And the word teachers was nowhere in the paragraph of this program. And she was she goes, our word, she was calling out that they were fluffy and they were not the words that their audience uses and identifies as themselves. Yeah. Shout out to Becky Hood of SMU Simmons School. She nailed it.
That's amazing.
Totally right. I was like floored. I had nothing. I was like, Bravo. Yes, I rest my case. Like, nothing more to add to this. Like,
yeah,
she nailed it.
That's awesome.
She did.
She mic dropped, actually. She
slammed her laptop.
Mic dropped on that one and like, got out of here. That's
all right, I got another one. I got another one, though. So, because that was a good one.
Yeah, so let's stick with vendor. Let's do the last vendor one, and then we'll jump into internal team.
Oh, you want a vendor one? Okay.
Yeah.
This one could be vendor or not. So, I think this one is a vendor one. It is. But
okay,
it's a twist.
I can't wait to hear what you're going to say.
So, I think most
vendor
schools
with a twist.
already have a vendor partner handling their digital advertising, their paid pay-per-click digital advertising, predominantly display and search ads.
Mm-hmm.
So I would say the majority of our listeners work at an institution where some outside vendors are already doing that. So this is where this is an audit. I think they need to go and do a deeper audit of their digital ads and ask very specific questions to understand true attribution of specific ad campaigns. Yeah.
Cut through the click-throughs.
I think so. I think if that's money spent so the vendor can do a deeper audit, fine. That's the outside vendor, have them do it. But or if it's money spent with a different vendor to audit the digital ads, which I know would be controversial, but you can do that. Or if it's not money spent, it's already included in the services they get, but it's work you've got to do to ask the questions to get the answers. Mm-hmm. There is a massive lack of understanding that marketing communications professionals at institutions or enrollment managers at institutions have of how the digital ads are actually impacting inquiries, applicants, and enrolled students. They're limited to too much vanity metrics, and there's way too much money being wasted on ad campaigns that should not be going there. Yeah. And no one's asking the right questions, or the reports they're getting, they stink. They are so lacking.
Do you think?
And it's a crime, and it's totally not sustainable. And we need to hold ad campaigns to like how they're impacting the bottom. They have to be attributed.
I think that's the bigger problem. If I was an institution, and I think we were in the same boat of, I was kind of getting, vanity metrics, even decent conversion metrics, but again, numbers. I think I would want an outside consultant to say, what are my options as far as how detailed of a report could I get? Not necessarily with this vendor, not necessarily with the current software that I have, but what is like the pinnacle of being able to report from ad click to enrolled student? How much can I get, and how do I get that? And then I'll pare down what I think is feasible for our institution. Because I think the monitoring of the ads is great, but again, if you still have none of that reporting, it doesn't matter. Great, go tweak the ads, go do these. You get the audit, they make all these changes, but you still have this lack of insight where it's like you didn't get any more information, you didn't get any further in progressing it. But if you got some sense of like, okay, I should be able to ask this vendor, give me these 5 metrics, and they should be able to report on that. And if they can't, that's a problem with the vendor. It's not a problem with your Facebook ads. And so instead, you need to move to this platform and do this thing, whatever it might be, to get a better sense. Because I think maybe that's where a lot of schools have the struggle. There are certainly digital ad vendors that are very controlling of their ads, and that's a different story, but.
Yeah, though I think the problem with that, and I'm pushing back a little bit on this idea. Like, I first of all, I'm not pushing back on the bigger idea that everyone needs to be asking those questions. The problem is they need to be asking those questions last year, because once you figure out that your vendor doesn't even have the information that you need and you have to hire a new one, then you have to wait another year to get the information that you need to find out. So maybe the takeaway is you need to ask those questions right now, the questions that Tony mentioned earlier, and make sure that like you're holding people accountable. It's remarkable the number of like the increases in digital ads spending that's happened in the last 5 years. Yeah. It's like very unreal. It's like and I think the problem that I see with it is exactly what you said. It's like this massive increase in spending and zero increase in accountability. Like we just think that's the solution, is to like just spend more and hopefully it'll like lead to more. It's like, no, that's not exactly how it always happens. So we have to be asking those questions.
My reasoning for investing in this is not a witch hunt. It's not, I know I sound a little negative about certain vendors and how they're kind of running away with institutions' monies without having anything accountable. But I actually want people in higher ed to be more educated and understand what it takes to do digital advertising, because I think they don't get it. They don't understand there's a lot of experimentation. Some ad campaigns produce no leads. And you need to do that and run it with that audience in order to know that that audience needs to be tweaked or isn't going to work. There's not like a magic ball where you already know the ad campaigns are going to do it. An ad campaign has multiple ad sets in it. Indeed, most of the ad platforms today, they're all algorithm based and bot based, where the ad platform is controlling the words and the images for you. Like, we're not manually putting up a billboard here anymore. It's like you're entering data into a machine, an AI, that's going to variate all these parameters based on what is producing the best results. And then you're constantly tweaking. So higher ed folks need to get used to seeing things and not freak out at their vendors that, why did that ad campaign not produce results? It's like, well, that was part of the process to get you this one that did produce 100 leads.
Yeah.
But we had to experiment for a couple of weeks and tweak budgets and audiences until it nailed it right. And if you don't let it run its course, you don't get the data from the system. Like, it's just how it works. I'm not asking higher ed folks to be ad experts. I am trying to increase the conversation so that smarter decisions can be made about that idea that you just said, Jamie, that like if we just buy more, it'll work better. I think the way out of that is educated through deeper reports that audit it. And so it's for this program or this school or this college or this audience, for that to be effective, the price point is here and we would need to invest this much.
Yeah.
We're not willing to do that, and that school's not a higher priority as this other one, then you make a better decision and everyone knows. And that way the people at that school aren't freaking out at you saying, why aren't I seeing ads for my school? We did an audit and we did the research and we found out that in order to get an applicant, it would take $180,000 to really get, 10 applicants for your program. And that's going to suck up 90% of the total available budget for all the schools and programs. Therefore, we're investing in other areas. I think that's the truth of it. And those are the kinds of conversations that just aren't really happening. And it's hard to see that when you get a report that just says, we got you bajillion million impressions, this many visits to your webpage, and these many people clicked to the app start button on your Slate application page. And so we know that this worked.
Yeah.
That's just not enough. You got to break that down.
Yeah. All right, Jamie, mix it up. Can't have you guys agree on both.
Yeah, I'm like torn on this one, because the reality is, like, if you're running an admissions office, most likely, like, your digital ads are like probably represent one of the bigger spends that you have in the given, fiscal year. So in that regard, I definitely agree with what Tony's saying. But there's this other part of me, like, that says having someone look at your website as a user, outside user perspective, and understand the UX of that is really important. But I'm just going to put a caveat on that and say you might be able to accomplish some of that by getting your if you don't control the website, maybe that's your web team that has to do that audit, and maybe they have the option to do that. So, like, share the wealth of the auditing. But I definitely think that there's this kind of a routine problem where, within higher ed, where, like, we just get used to it. We get used to the site. We get used to the way it, like, rolls and the calls to action, all that. And it's like, oh yeah, it's good enough. And sometimes, like, just good enough is not, adequate to, beat that competing school that's, like, offering a little bit more financial aid or something like that. We've got to get that right on the money. So, it's just so hard, because it's like it's not a direct outlay of money, but it represents revenue that you're not getting if the experience on the web is really bad.
Yeah.
Shift tactic.
I'm like,
what about
I'm in a
auditing
tug
other
of war.
things? What about Conflows?
Yeah, that's what I was going to say.
Yeah, that's the one that I would do internally. That's the one I think you could do internally. And it's like, that's one where I love, like, again, kind of hearkening back to my director of admissions days, like getting the team in a room, thinking through like, hey, what are the conversations that we're having? What are the things that like land really well? Where are we not representing this experience like in our written word? And like making sure that all of that kind of is somehow in a comm flow or somehow represented in different comm flows to different stages of the cycle. I think that one can be done internally. And I think actually that one can be done internally very well if you have a capable team and a team that's really kind of exercised in like verbalizing conversations and pain points that they're hearing from students and, pride points that they want to talk about for the institution. So I would definitely kind of move that one toward the internal side.
I would do website internal.
What's that?
External. Because I think it's easier. So
really?
For website internal, I think you could use something like a Hotjar, for example, which is a website tracking tool that allows you to see scroll percentage, allows you to see where their mouse is hovering on all these pages. And then I think
heat map.
Yeah, you can basically, you and your team can get in a room, but all right, they're only scrolling 40% of the way down this page, which means they're missing all this information. What's actually core? What I think it'll help with is what is actually core that we want people to see. And you're dealing with limited space, right? You can't, if you're even, nobody is dumb enough to think, let me just put 600 word paragraph in there with nothing else, with zero, space in between sentences or anything. And just cram in as many words.
Is that the challenge to find that website? Find that website.
But I think it'll force you to kind of think through like, what are our really, like our power phrases are things that we really want to have people, when they land on this page, they're trying to find X. Let's present that to them as clear as possible with a clear call to action, because no one's getting to the bottom of the page to then go click to schedule a call because they found the information they needed. They didn't even actually know that was an option yet. They either clicked somewhere else on your website or they left. If they left, that's not a terrible thing. That might mean they got the information they wanted if they come back. Or if they click to another page, where did they go? Maybe they're trying to find additional information that wasn't clear and obvious on the page they thought it would be on. And so you can kind of restructure internally, and you're playing with a puzzle at that point with your team. That I think is a really good exercise, because you'll know your website better than a vendor will, because they'll look at it at a high level, but they don't know all of the pages. They don't know where all the things are. I mean, websites are massive. And then some schools also have a sub page for every possible imaginable thing. Yeah. And so maybe tackling that one internally, and then from a comm flow standpoint, having a vendor more look at it, not necessarily for messaging, but more for structure and flow of, there are some, I mean, when Enrollify did their big 100 RFI report, and some just, as I mentioned, the 600 word paragraph, they're putting that in an email. And it's just terrible. And I think they would think, let me rewrite that 600 word paragraph and use 600 different words there. Now it's better. And it's like,
for our listeners who don't know, just to catch people up, Enrollify did a secret shopper experiment and tested over 100 RFI forms and analyzed the emails in particular that they experienced, our research team experienced after
MBA programs.
They were all business schools. It was very revealing, and there's a really, really cool presentation on this.
Had to blur out a couple schools just to not embarrass anybody, because some of them were rough. But so I think it's a mix. But I think the website one, I think it actually helps with some of your email stuff later too. Of here's the catchy stuff on the website. How can we have an email that complements that, mimics that a little bit, complements it, rather than a vendor coming in and saying, add a button here, add an image here, add a thing here. And it's like, okay, great. But how valuable was that? And you're not any smarter after reading that. And you're not any more aware of how to maybe utilize the information.
Yeah. The other thing that I also would maybe put as the preface to making this decision that I probably should have done at the beginning, but now that I've thought about it a little bit more, I know I would actually use my regular, like my weekly enrollment report to figure out like what's the conversion area that has the biggest problem, and use that to help me figure out like, okay, if I'm looking at, like this section, like this is the area I want to audit, this, like that would help me determine like where am I going to put my energy.
So that brings up an interesting question.
Okay.
Two things. I wonder how you guys think about doing an outsourcing to a vendor, a consultant, your enrollment report, your diagnostics. Like, because immediately I'm thinking, Jamie, the VP of enrollment, he's got his weekly enrollment report and you got your pulse on the numbers. But here, I wonder, there's a part of me that's second guessing this and saying, maybe that's the thing that should be an outsourced audit, because we're too close to it in higher ed. The workers in higher ed, you're too close to it, Jamie, and you need a different perspective, I think, on it. Like when we get diagnostics and we say, look, here's the questions we ask. I'll just be super transparent. We want to know, I want to know, like, okay, from top to the bottom, I want to know top of the funnel, traffic, how many visits are they getting? And then I want to know, like, total submissions, like how many total people are they getting to convert on any sort of form? And then out of those, how many are actually more serious and actually inquiring any sort of RMI, RFI? Then I want to get down to people starting apps. Then I want to get down to people completing apps. Then I want to get down to admitted students and then deposits and enrolled. And when you get the truth of that, you start to analyze some things and see things differently, because I feel like the Jamies out there, like you in this analogy, you're too close to it where there's certain transition points there that you just accept as standard, as default. Like,
you're always looking at your own year-over-year data and going, we improved from 6% to 7%. Great. And it's like, well, average is 12, so not great. Like, there's low-hanging fruit there that you're thinking, even if you're doing better than you were the previous year, it doesn't mean that's where it should be or could be. And with some minor adjustments, you could potentially almost double, the results you're getting from a thing. But you feel like it's improvement. And so you kind of settle into this routine, just like, well, it's going well. Things are going well. It's not worth spending more time there because it is an improvement. When actually that could be an area that's
I think most people don't do that, Tony, though?
Bad news.
Well, it is bad news, is because their entire tech stack is built up of disparate pieces that don't talk to each other, and thus the understanding of overall influence and sourcing and all this measurement. It's like such a quagmire that you can't spend 30% or 15% of your budget to do it, because it's like you actually need someone to be involved the entire year. But
I wonder if that's why they do need the outside consultant to come in and say, okay, that's fine. I'll put it together for you. I just need these. Just get me. And so, like, I don't care if, Jamie, you have to go to Shane, the chief information officer, to get access to the Google Analytics just to get
data files,
the traffic within 12 months. Okay. And then you have to go to the enrollment manager or the admissions team to do the application numbers, but you need to go to someone else to get you gotta go to the agency to get the digital lead conversions, because nobody knows how many leads the digital ad agency got, because they're just reporting it themselves. But the consultant brings together those disparate numbers and says, hey, Jamie, this is truth. This is your actual conversion rates from top funnel full all the way down to the bottom. Did you know this? Like, so for every 1,000 visitors to your website, you get this many inquiries or this many applicants or this many students. Like, we need to tie top ratios to bottom ratios. Like, and get it a sense of, like, for every X dollars we spend, or every this many hits we get of this or this many likes, we likely end up getting this many converted these. And so if we want more, we have to work backwards up the math.
But I think the value the vendor provides, right? Because you could make a sheet and say, fill this out, and they have to go fill it out. They can get access to those percentages theoretically on their own.
Theoretically.
If they had the sheet, right?
Yeah.
I think the vendor is the pressure to do it, first of all, which is super important. But the vendor can also 100%. Provide you with a level of, this is good, this is bad. Yeah. You can definitely
How should you think about it?
Here's here are recommendations to improve the gap between those two things.
I think that's what you're paying for.
We've seen 100 schools fill this out. We have all the data. now we can help you versus you just thinking, again, in terms of year over year, or just, oh, great, I know my numbers. Now, how do I know what's good and what's bad? Like, I think that's the tricky part.
The only scary part about that scenario for me is I know there are vendors in the space that will do this, but I feel like sometimes their approach is so cookie cutter that it's like,
that's
do
fair.
I really want? I mean,
that's
like,
fair.
Don't get me wrong, like it's so, and I feel like that's how some of the big ones have like made their mark in the industry. It's like the big, I won't mention them, but like the big ones that are out there. Yeah, the juggernauts, you know, there's 3 or 4 that are out there, and they just like, oh yeah, well, this is what you're going to get, and we're going to take that info, and we're going to use your data, bad data in, bad data out. We're going to feed this back to you in the form that we use. We're going to slap our solution on top of it and say, you know, try to make a sales pitch. And it's like, I mean, at the end of the day, I think so many institutions fall prey to that. It makes me sad, but at the same time, there's like, hopefully something good that comes out of it. I don't know. That's
but
my
I think that's
fear
the important
in
one
that
of the
scenario.
things we were talking about before is the questions to ask a vendor prior.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of the important things of like, I want to know X, Y, and Z. Will your report tell me that? Or I want to see this. Will I be able to see that?
Yeah.
And I think those are the types of things that if you don't have a good understanding of what you're going to get, why are you're buying it with this like pipe dream, and then what you get is blah. And it's just,
I'd say the same thing to your email conflict audit, Shane, because if you're saying you think they should outsource that, which I think that's different, and I could get behind that. I think they need to be asking specific things. Hey, vendor, will you be able to tell me which subject line and preview text combinations are generating the best out of my emails? I also want you to analyze all of my email metrics, the open rates and click rates, and give me a report on those and tell me which emails are the worst. I also want you to analyze the messaging and tell me which ones you think have weak messaging and strong messaging. And then I also want you to analyze style and format for friction. Like that specific things you go tell the vendor, pay them $10,000. They analyze your entire email conflows. If they say, cool, I can give you all that.
Yeah,
I would totally spend that money.
Yeah.
I think that's money
well
spent.
To see a sample of what it may look like. Like, I think any vendor should be able to produce some level. Again, if it's a massive report that's completely custom, that's a little bit harder. But here's a rough, version of. Let's go back to the SEO audit, for example. Here's what a rough SEO audit looks like, and the things that you can expect to get from it, and the tangible next steps and action items that we're giving you, versus. Okay, here's the report, and you look at it and you're like, well, I could go get this from Google by myself. Like, you didn't do anything for me other than enter my URL into a thing, click a button, and then send me the PDF.
Yeah. It's kind of like they'll go into the mechanic and saying, I got this problem.
Yeah, that's fair.
Right? You know what I mean? And like, and I'd say I do this, like I've done this before, and it hasn't been the problem. So I'm telling my mechanic to fix something that I think is the problem when really that's not the problem at all. So I think there's some of this where it's like, the institution themselves has to understand, like, what do I need to know? And so sometimes, I think oftentimes, like you hire a vendor or consultant because you're like, I need to be like more understanding. I need to have a deeper level of understanding that they can provide. Whereas I think the paradox in what we're kind of shaping here is that we're going to be asking questions. And in some way, that like us asking those questions is really kind of us saying,
Fine,
here's our
but
problem.
Simple pivot
So
then. And here's the takeaway, folks.
Yeah,
I hear you. That's
right.
a really good point, Jamie. So the simple pivot to that is just ask. It's what Shane said. Just tell me what am I going to get?
Yeah.
Hey, mechanic, if I give you my car and you do the 128 point inspection, you just give me a sense of what it's going to look like. Because if of that 128 point inspection, 100 of those things are like,
that's
you
such
need
a load
to
of crap.
Refill your windshield washer fluid. I don't want that. that's
definitely one of them.
And it's so I think takeaway, folks, you don't have to know. But the pivot is before you outsource for any of these audits that we've said to outsource, just ask the vendor, the consultant, hey, can you just give me an example of what I'm going to get when you do this audit, just so our expectations are clear. And if you see something and they're like, it'll look like this and it'll tell you these things and that's what you want, then you spend your money smarter. I think that's fair.
And that's where you can...
Right. You just have to understand your pain points too. Like you have to really understand, what am I trying to solve for? And that's where it's like, okay, I'm trying to solve for this. I see that they're going to provide this. That solves for part of it or most of it. It's like,
and I think with
that's a green light for me.
The mindset of what am I going to get type of thing, you can pretty easily determine what can we do internally versus what then, right? As you go to an SEO company, hey, do this audit for me. Great. There are all these things now that you need to do, right? They're not going to come back to you and say, everything's amazing. You're crushing it. Good job. Yeah. You wouldn't have been there in the first place if that was the case, right? And so there's going to be stuff to do. Are you going to do that? Can your team do it? If your team can't do it, this other agency company can do it for you. But there are things that you can do. Hey, we'll tackle the content edits because those are a little bit easy. Let's go change some words. We have someone on our team that's a content manager that can then go do those things. But we can't really do the technical. Can you help us?
You got to go into your CMS.
We don't want to go to the IT team and ask them. It'll get put in their queue. It'll take 3 months. We want to get this done this month so we can knock it off our list. Can you do those things? And I think that's where you have a good sense of what you can prioritize internally versus externally and pay for, rather than it's either going to be all us or all the vendor. And both of those options seem a little scary if I'm at an institution. I think that's the other value of asking what you're going to get. All right, we're running low on time here, but last thing was what you do internally. I already picked mine, but you all have not said
that. We covered it. What
was yours?
I said
yours
was email.
What was yours?
I did email.
I kind of piggybacked off your guys. It was either mine was going to be the email Conflow audit. I thought that was internal, but then I got thrown off by your regs you threw in there, and you convinced me. You converted me, Shane.
Nice.
I think the funny takeaway of this whole thing is like we all said, some of us would do these internally, and some said do them externally. So, listeners, you're kind of left with like,
who do you like most of the three of us? Pick what they said.
Don't answer that.
Hopefully, the road that we chose to get there is helpful to think through.
I will preface that I'm the youngest and probably thus the most innovative, just based on that, maybe. Anyway.
Wow. Shots fired. All right. Episode 9, I believe. It's going to be a slugfest. We're going to put Shane on the seat, and Jamie and I are going to totally have to pivot off of what we come up with. Smart guy.
Unfortunately, I'm the host, and we will not be doing that for episode 9.
Yeah. There's the cutting edge, and there's the bleeding edge, Shane. Bleeding edge.
Episode 9 will be about back in the 80s when you guys were in school. What were things like? No, just joking. You're way younger than that.
You're so kind.
Yeah.
Awesome.
But I was definitely in school in the 80s.
Not in college. Were you in college in the 80s?
No.
Yeah.
No.
It was in a school.
Yeah.
Not that old.
Awesome. Alrighty. So last week we talked about, I keep saying last week, I mean last episode, and I just can't keep it straight. Tony, you were in the middle of prepping for a NAGAP presentation around working with a new dean and what that looks like with maybe some more legacy people under this new dean and how maybe that relationship can and should work. Jamie, you were working with the DD agency account team on kind of prepping people for renewals, making sure that we're still doing what works and what we do best, but also being able to build in some room to innovate and test. So curious, looking forward at the next couple of weeks, even months, maybe thinking as people move into their new fiscal year, what's a big focus and priority for you all, either internally for the DD agency team to be prepped to lead our clients well, or for you all to lead our clients well, in order to kind of, again, keep the momentum of, a lot of the new strategies, innovations that may have been put into place.
So I'm going to go out on a limb here, and I'm going to say, you said it. You basically said over the next couple months. So really what we're looking at here is we have a summer coming up, right? We have a time where historically in the education system, especially in the pre-digital education system, if we want to harken back to the 80s, which was earlier referenced, there used to be this like breath, this like chasm where it's like, okay, we get to kind of like slow down. And I think that there's an important like balance that we need to continue to like strive toward. And I think that one of the things that I really like as my kids, I have 2 teenage kids and one who's a tween, that like they have a pretty busy schedule through the summer, and there's like this real wrestling match of like being able to take downtime. And I think that there's a part where getting our downtime, giving your team your downtime, like what the things that they need to recharge and get ready for the next season. I think that's important. I know it's not like, it doesn't always mean, several days in a row out of the office, but what's it mean to like encourage your team to like be thinking, about different things, learning different things over the summer, listening to podcasts or webinars, or, getting them to conferences or stuff like that. I think I want to be in that space where I'm like making an allowance for like that sort of space. And I would, and likewise, I think encouraging our clients to like, just to take that beat. So that's not work related necessarily.
That's a good one to go out on, I think most people can get behind that.
Yeah.
Tony?
Yeah.
That was so good, Jamie. I'm like in that
this is
world
a flip-flop of last episode. Tony led with a good one. Jamie had to follow up.
That was
pressure's on.
I don't even remember. What's the question?
What do you, as we're heading into the summer, what's kind of got your time, focus, energy for either our team to enable our clients to do well, or directly for our clients?
Yeah, it is definitely strategic planning. The time put into strategic planning, having a reset, pausing and doing it. All this stuff actually we just talked about this episode, to be honest. This can all be done in one half-day session or a full-day session. I think the value of taking the shift of the fiscal year or the summer, whatever it is, summer's generally just the best time for it, strategic planning, pausing and pulling up and looking up and saying, how did things go? Audit it together. It doesn't have to be professional. If you have no money to outsource any audits to any vendor, fine. Just do a meeting, do strategic planning, but look at the past, take stock of where your numbers are now at the current moment, and plan for the future. Like the value of that, the schools that do that, the teams that do that win in the next recruitment cycle. The teams that don't do it and just kind of rinse, repeat, or just run right into it and don't set up enough time to do that. And I tell this to our own team. This is like what we say internally, guys, you have to do this. I don't even care if the client's ready to do it. Like we have to do it ourselves. Pull up, think intentionally. That's what I think about when I think about summer. It's always strategic planning. It's worth its weight in gold.
Yep. Love it. Awesome. Well, thank you all for listening to episode 8 of The Pivot. Hope to see you again in 2 weeks.